Couple minutes past the hour, top of the morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being a part of Miller and Moulton on Southwest Florida's Fox Sports Radio. I come at you from Chicago, Tampa Bay, and the Bears tonight. Bucks a 3.5-point favorite, but they are wounded. Wide receiving core depleted, running back core depleted, even more than that. Dr. Roto to answer all your fantasy questions coming up at the bottom of the hour. Right now, it's a pleasure to catch back up with Joe Theismann, Super Bowl champion, College Football Hall of Famer, NFL MVP, restaurateur, actor. Follow him on Twitter at Theismann7. Joe, hope all is well with you and the family. How are you?
Everything is good. I hope the same for you, and I hope everybody out there is staying safe. We are in unprecedented, crazy times, and it's just got to sort of take a breath and make sure you're doing the right things.
Well, do you think Ron Rivera did the right thing yesterday? You know, you were a young quarterback once in which, you got bounced around and you had playing time pulled out from under you on a couple of occasions. I literally thought of you when I heard the news and thought, I can't imagine Joe Theismann's real happy with what Ron Rivera did, because I'm guessing you're putting yourself in Mr. Haskins' shoes.
Well, to a degree, and I like the fact you said one time I was young. I like that. I really was, to be honest with you. But, we all are on the outside looking in. Ron is around it every day. Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator, is the same way. Kenny Zampese, the quarterback coach. They've had time to evaluate Dwayne. And I don't think this decision was just made because of one game. Remember, when Ron got here, he named Dwayne the starter right from the get-go. Dwayne has worked with the number ones from the time they went on the practice field until this past week when he's not going to be dressing probably. He's had two things that really jumped out at me. Number one is misses have always been high. You look at his interceptions, that's the situation he was faced with. The second was he seems to be late with a lot of throws. And those are the things that have happened. Those are facts. Now, you can look at sort of the reason why. He's had 1 year of college experience and basically threw a ton of bubble screens in college. He had a track team around him as far as receivers go at Ohio State. He had 7 games, really only 5 worth anything. The first 2 he started last year weren't that much. Bill Callahan took over, and they became a 65% running football team. So he wasn't asked to throw a lot. Now Ron Rivera comes in, but he's had no OTAs, no mini camps, no training camp, no preseason games, and you're asking him to learn a new system. He's not polished yet, or even shining a little bit when it comes to the fact that you're going to be a quarterback in the National Football League. And so I think the decision was the right thing based upon what Ron saw. I support him 100%.
What can Haskins do? You talked about 2 clear things where he is not performing the right way: high throws and late throws. Are they fixable, Joe?
They are fixable, and it's a great question. And this is the thing that people aren't asking. Everybody's talking about not listening to local radio, and everybody's talking about Dwayne's this, Dwayne's that. To me, this is a very critical point in Dwayne's, not only his career, but his life. What are you going to do? I went through this situation, and what I did is we had our equipment. We had Bernetti. Jay is now with the San Francisco 49ers. I used to get him out after practice. If the receivers were tired, we didn't have as many as they have now, and we didn't have the practice squad they have now. Jay would come out with his gloves, and I would work by myself.
We just lost Joe there. So, David, let me try to get him back on.
Yeah, well, I think we could all hear somebody was calling Joe while he was on the air with us. Joe Theismann joining us and asking him about the Redskins' decision yesterday to bench Dwayne Haskins and, in fact, move him all the way down to 3rd string on the depth chart. And so Ron Rivera going with the young quarterback that he had in Carolina last year, and Alex Smith moves all the way up to 2nd string. It's 1 month shy of 2 years since that catastrophic leg injury that he suffered. And Alex Smith now just a play away, if you will, from making his way back onto the field and playing in a game, a moment that we all thought would never happen. I am surprised, Mark, and I know that you're trying to get Joe back on the line. I am surprised that Joe is in as much agreement as he is with the Redskins' decision. To me, the only thing that the Redskins organization needs to accomplish in 2020 is to find out whether or not Dwayne Haskins is the guy. And that is the number one thing that they have to accomplish this year. And I don't see how they accomplish that now unless they've already made their decision. Joe, you were talking about grabbing the equipment guy and working out.
Yeah, well, I think this is important for Dwayne now is that he's got to make a decision on what he's going to do. He is in probably the loneliest situation you can be in other than being hurt. You've been benched. You're number 3. You're not going to dress. So what are you going to do? Are you going to pout? Are you going to mope? Or are you going to sit down with the coach and say, what do I need to do better? And then you go try and do it. And you work by yourself after practice. Like I said, this is a lonely, lonely time. And I've been there. And it's not easy because, you're basically, it's you, yourself, and yourself. And you have to be able to push through this. And now it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to the situation of being benched. I mean, hitters go through slumps. Quarterbacks go through problems. People are pulled and benched. The question is, what do you do? I think now you get to say, okay, what are you made of? You turn tail and say, oh, I'm done. I expected more. This is a cruel game. This game is cruel in so many ways, and don't expect any love from it. But he has total control of what he wants to do going forward. I think he's the one that has to make a decision on how he wants to improve and what he needs to improve on.
Joe, do you think it's possible that Ron Rivera has decided in basically 2 months that, Haskins can't play in this league? Or do you think that this is just a this moment in time thing, and that really there's a chance if they don't do well in the next 6 weeks that they move him back and make him the starter again?
I don't believe he'll be back here to starter again. Because here's the problem: is Ron has identified things that he is not good at, and being number 3 and not participating in practice to any degree, you're never going to get better at it this year. There isn't a magic pill out there that Dwayne's going to take and all of a sudden his throws are going to be lower. He's going to anticipate the breaks of receivers. Those things, they're not going to happen because he's not going to be on the field practicing. He got all the snaps with the one. Now Kyle's going to get all the snaps, and Alex is going to get some. And Dwayne's going to run the scout team. And it's interesting. When I ran the scout team, I really tried to make it as hard as possible for our defense. I mean, they put up cards and they ask you to run things, but it doesn't mean that you don't try hard to throw football into places where you got to be successful. I mean, it really becomes a mind game. It's a huge mind game for him. What do you want to do? How are you going to approach practice? Those are all things that I think he has to deal with. But I see Alex and Kyle, and just on a footnote, it's so great to see Alex Smith really in the position that he's in after having gone through what he has. You guys saw the E60, I'm sure, on Project 11, on Alex and his leg. I mean, we had very similar breaks up until the break, and then everything that he dealt with after that was just incredible. Showed incredible strength as a human being and his family support and his toughness.
Joe, I'm curious because we talked about this after the injury. It was one of the last times we had you when he was basically getting through it, and it looked like he might play again. And I know we've talked to you a couple of times about it, and I'm glad you led to this because I know you've got to be excited. But I'm just curious, in the past, I don't know, month or so, have you talked to Alex? Have you two? I mean, is there sort of bond that we all kind of see because the injuries were so similar, and we all watched it happen to you so many years ago, Joe? Is there any conversations that the two of you have had in recent times?
We've communicated through Texas, just wish them luck, congratulate them so that he made the active roster. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic and the restrictions the NFL has placed on going to the facilities, I haven't had a chance to see him but once work, and he looked good out on the football field. You have to go back to what Ron said just at the beginning of the season, the end of training camp. He said, I'm going to feel more comfortable doing something with Alex when I get a chance to see, quote unquote, if he can protect himself. Well, without any preseason games, Ron still doesn't really know if he can protect himself. I think he's observing him in practice, maybe seeing him move a little bit better, maybe seeing him go to the left and right. For me, the problem was moving left. I could sort of slide out of the pocket right, but when it came to moving left, you have to push off that right leg. And it was a problem for me. It really took me 2.5 years to get back where I could really move again. And that's about where Alex is. And believe me, there's no way Ron or Scott or anybody in that organization would put Alex in a situation where they didn't believe he could take care of himself. So where he is now, I'm excited as we'll get out for him. We do communicate, like I say, sparingly, not as much as we would if we were, if I had the opportunity to go to the facility.
We're talking with Joe Theismann, former Super Bowl champion, NFL MVP. You can follow him on Twitter at Theismann7. Joe, I heard Kurt Warner doing Monday Night Football, in which now this is the guy, of course, we know what he did, but he was quarterback of the greatest show on turf. And he was kind of incredulous watching the offenses right now, in which he's like, yeah, I don't know how you play defense anymore. And it was just funny because 20 years ago, we were all trying to figure out how we were going to defend his offense. So when you watch the league now and you think about the league that you played in, and from then until now, I mean, are we getting close to the point where we're going to have to figure something out defensively, or else every game's going to be 42-38?
Yeah, welcome to flag football. NFL version of flag football. I agree with them. And if you're a defensive back, and it depends upon the officials too. Different officials call games differently. And this is something that coaches scout. People don't realize this. People will scout officials. Some officials will let you nuzzle a little bit more. Some will let you be a little more handsy. Others will call it much tighter. And you have to know who's refereeing your football game. You have to know what the officials will and will not call. I agree with him. I mean, the inconsistency in roughing the quarterback. I saw polls last week where I forget who it was. Maybe it was the Rams or somebody. You hit the quarterback and you hit him. You don't fall on top of him, and you knock him to the ground, and they throw a flag. Whereas if you tackle him and you fall on top of him, they don't throw a flag. To Sam Darnold, the reason Sam Darnold got hurt, that should have been, without question, a roughing the quarterback and no flag. It's that inconsistency, I think, that everybody complains about. Just give me one set of rules. Give me one set of eyes to tell me what I'm supposed to do and not supposed to do. But playing defense in the National Football League right now, it's very difficult. You can't touch receivers after 5 yards. You can barely touch a quarterback. If you push him to the ground, if he throws the ball and you push him to the ground, that's considered roughing the quarterback. That's become absurd. They really need to sit and evaluate that particular penalty. Because here's something that's very interesting in football to me. Kickers are in an extremely vulnerable position. Leg in the air, no protection. But yet they have 2 degrees of penalties when it comes to kickers. Running into the kicker and roughing the kicker. To me, why don't you have that same distinction for quarterbacks? If a guy's been pushed to the ground, that's a 5-yard penalty. We're serving notice that you can't push him around. But if you do abuse him and you do hurt him, and it looks like you want to hurt him, that's a 15-yard penalty.
Boy,
I just don't know. I know the position is valuable, but believe me, guys that are up in the air with their legs in the air are extremely valuable also.
And Joe, I love it because this year we've watched officials convene a lot and decide to pick a flag up or to make sure they've got the right call. And I think that's an opportunity where they can convene. The one guy wants to call roughing the passer, and someone else can say, hey, I saw it from another angle. You need to make that a running into the quarterback, particularly on out of bounds plays when you're trying to tell defenders to tackle the quarterback who's elusive. And right now, if you don't have a running quarterback, it seems that you're behind the 8 ball in most situations. And now these guys are scrambling, trying to get first downs. And if you push them after they stepped out of bounds, it's 15. But if you push them right before, that's okay. I don't know how you're supposed to tell a defender to pull up. I mean, while you're going to tackle the guy, make sure one of your eyes is looking at where the white is on the sidelines. That seems impossible to do running full speed.
I agree with you. I mean, it is very difficult to all of a sudden throw the brakes on. How about the game the other night when the New England KC game, when Patrick Mahomes basically is being tackled, he's switching hands to throw the ball, and they either blew the whistle or said it was an incomplete pass, which actually was an interception or a fumble, however you want to rule it. But they've also told the officials, that's the kind of stuff. You've got a quarterback like Patrick Mahomes, who we've seen time after time after time escape being in the grass. And now all of a sudden you blow the whistle. That's the inconsistency that I'm talking about. Try and be consistent on what you're going to do. If you're going to let a guy who can move around, run around, let him do it. If you've got a guy like Tom Brady, for example, who's a much more stationary quarterback, people get around him, they get around his legs, blow the flag, protect him. If you're going to protect him, protect him. If you're going to let the guys move, let them move. It's like, Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. These are guys that you don't get them down one swipe at them. But it's, like I said, really, I think what coaches and players are looking for is consistency. And Kurt's absolutely right. As far as defenses go, man, it's an unbelievably difficult job. And that's why you're seeing people go after and pay big money to outside rushers. Because you need speed on the outside to try and force the quarterback to get rid of the football. And those are the ones now that become the big pay guys.
Joe, your gut feeling, unless you have some data, the injuries. One, do you think there are more of them through the first 4 weeks this year than in other recent years? And if so, do you think it is tied to the fact that we didn't have a normal camp, we didn't have preseason football, and that guys were in shape, but they weren't in football shape?
The answer to that question is twofold, and I agree with both of them. First of all, there are more injuries, and there are more soft tissue injuries. How many receivers have hamstring issues? I mean, that's the preponderance of them. And absolutely, without the OTAs, the mini camps, the training camps, that's where you get hurt a little bit. That's where you pull a muscle. That's where you get a week to heal, where you don't have to be on the field. Without all of that stuff, this is exactly what we see. The first 3 weeks of our season were basically training camp and preseason games. And that's where players usually wind up with the pulls, the nicks, and the things that have become nagging, the ankle injuries. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And you're absolutely right. 100%. I don't have data, but your eyes tell you what you see. When you're in practice and you're going after a ball as a wide receiver, you are not in top gear. When you're in a game and you're chasing a ball and things are moving a lot faster, you're pushing yourself to another level, a level that you haven't conditioned your body to. And then as far as offensive linemen go, they don't get to block anybody. They don't get to hit anyone. And now all of a sudden you're taking on an Aaron Donald, for example, or a Khalil Mack. Different story. Yeah, I do really think that both those things have to do with the injuries that we're dealing with.
Joe, I was listening to a show yesterday, and they kind of started talking about, I think it was Brady Quinn actually, just talking about drop back passers, and kind of made a point saying, I don't know if that's what you can have anymore. When you look at a Matt Ryan and a Matt Stafford, who are guys that still have a few years left, but haven't gotten to where they want to go to. I'm not talking about Breeze and Brady because they're nearly done. But Joe, if you were the GM of a team right now, would you draft a straight up drop back passer anymore?
I would be reluctant to take somebody who was totally stationary. The quarterback I would draft right now would have to have some degree of mobility. For example, Dwayne Haskins in Washington, is basically a drop back passer, but he can move. He has athleticism. He dropped 20 pounds. You can put him on the edge. You can move him out of the pocket. You can run bootlegs with him. You can do certain things with him. That would be the type of a guy I would go for if I was looking for a drop back quarterback. I wouldn't want an exclusive run around guy either. I wouldn't want somebody where, for example, if Baltimore gets behind and you take them out of their running game, which we've seen Kansas City do a couple times, you force Lamar to start to throw the football, which is something they don't necessarily feature in their offense. They're a tight end based offense and a running team offense. And then they run Hollywood down the field for big plays. It's if you want to run your offense because of the limited times that we have, and this is an aberration this year. We know that. I mean, my goodness, you've got you've got facilities that are closing for 2 or 3 days, and you've got all kinds of crazy things happening. So to look at this year, I think you just got to put an asterisk by everything and say, okay, how quickly can we get through all this stuff? But I would be very reluctant just to find a pure drop back guy. Joe Burrow, for example, I think, worked very well in college out of the pocket. Again, has mobility. Justin Herbert, same thing. Big guy, moves pretty well. Josh Allen up in Buffalo, classic example. Big guy, throws well out of the pocket, but really, really effective when he starts to move. The one guy that has really shown, I think, this year what diligence and hard work will do, is Cam Newton. You look at the last game that Cam played, he threw the ball from the pocket as well as I've seen him throw in his entire career. His footwork was good. His accuracy was incredible. Now you add that dimension of athleticism to it, and you really have a force to deal with.
Well, his work ethic's always been excellent. You know, people go at Cam a lot of different ways, but his teammates love him, and he's always worked hard. And most every coach has always spoken highly of him as well.
But he dresses great. I mean, he dresses cool. I mean, I can't wear hats like that.
I was going to say, I'd love to see you in one of those hats, Joe. The next time you're playing golf at Fiddlesticks, Joe, show up in one of those hats and see what they say.
I'll do that. Next time I'm down there, I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to bring my Cam hat. Just for you. Just for you guys.
Love it. Love it, Joe.
Joe, stay safe, be well, safe travels, all the best.
Hey, listen, just a couple other things. Actually, besides all the things you said, I actually have a book out now called How to Be a Champion Every Day. You can get it, you can order it online on Amazon, and it's the 6 timeless keys to success. It's based off of my presentations and speeches, talk about goals and attitudes and motivation. And the other thing I'm involved with is a company called MedLiminal, and the website is MEDLIMINAL. And what it is basically, to make it real short and sweet, it's a company that takes your medical bills and they look at them, because none of us could read a medical bill. And they take them, they look at them, and make sure that you're not being overcharged. That's the capsule version of it. So it's called MedLiminal. And it really helps a lot of people who have no idea what you're being billed for.
I have a co-host who had a kidney removed recently because he had cancer. I have a funny feeling he may want to use that service, Joe. I may be texting you about this when we're done.
Yeah, I would. It's called MedLiminal, like I say, MEDLIMINAL. And if everything is the way it is, fine. But if not, why not have somebody sort of like a watchdog? Look out for some of the things that you may be charged for that, maybe you don't understand or need an explanation for.
Joe Theismann, MVP, Super Bowl champ, and entrepreneur. Every time we talk to him, there's something else going on. Joe,
and every time I turn around, my wife's got the Hallmark Channel on, and he's in one of them shows.
Actually, there were 2. I did Love on the Sidelines, and I did another one called Snow Coming, and I'm thinking we're going to shoot possibly a third. We shoot in Vancouver, and of course, when you travel to Canada, you have to 2 weeks quarantine. So maybe shooting another one in November in Vancouver. So Hallmark Channel's great. With everything that's going on, with all the craziness, the politics, and all the nuttiness that's going on in this world today, tune into the Hallmark Channel. You're going to make yourself feel good for a couple hours.
Well, I will say this. They end up kissing and falling in love at the end. Joe, thanks so much.
What's wrong with that?
Not a darn thing, Joe. We all need a happy ending. Have a great day, Joe. We'll talk soon.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Follow Joe on Twitter at Theismann7. Theismann7. Joe Theismann joining us once again here on Miller and Moulton. Dr. Roto, get your fantasy football questions. 479-5551. Text them in 479-5551 or fire away in the Twitch chat room for Dr. Roto next on Miller and Moulton.